Eckernförde Naval Base.
Good morning, Crew Alpha.
With U-32, Alpha Crew heads towards the maneuver.
Crew to diving stations.
The crew of the 400 million euro submarine is constantly on alert.
Fire on board. Diesel engine on fire. First steps initiated.
Rudder failure. Rudder failure. Steering console failed.
Up to 30 people live here in the most cramped conditions for weeks on end.
Some have problems with smelly feet, of course, but you just have to put up with it.
The mood on board can quickly change. The food has to be good.
I prepared 136 meals for the crew today.
Eckernförde Naval Base in Schleswig-Holstein, the German Navy's only deep-water port on the Baltic Sea. And this is where the 6 German Navy submarines are based. Not very many, but they're ultra-modern. Besides the submariners, combat swimmers and the crews of fleet service and support boats are also based here. A total personnel of 1,900. "8 p.m. The crew of the U-32 gather for the roll call. The submarine is to sail the following day. Commander Rudolf Lente and Lieutenant Commander Beck swear the crew in.
Salute the commander. Eyes left.
For Commander Lente, it's the first maneuver with this crew, which has the name Crew Alpha. The 28 members belong to the 1st Submarine Squadron Eckernförde and are part of the elite band of sailors because in the German Navy there are only around 80 active submariners in 4 separate crews. The crew have been through 2 months of intense preparation for this maneuver. U-32 will sail from Eckernförde across the Bay of Kiel to reach the Holtenau Lock in the Kiel Fjord. The lock marks the beginning of the Kiel Canal, one of the busiest waterways in the world. After almost 100 kilometers in the narrow canal, the submarine passes through the lock at Brunsbüttel. Here, the cameras have to leave the vessel, as the U-32 is on its way to a top-secret NATO maneuver off Plymouth in southern England. U-32 is a Class 212A submarine, the world's most modern non-nuclear powered vessel type. The hull is made of non-magnetic steel. This makes the submarine almost invisible to military tracking devices and virtually undetectable underwater, even for sonar. 1,500 tons of special steel was used. The interior is pure high-tech, much of it top secret. A submarine of this type costs around 400 million euros. In a war scenario, these torpedo tubes contain 6 wire-guided heavyweight torpedoes. There are 21 beds on board, and the up to 30 men and women in the crew sleep alternately in shifts. The almost 2 square meters of private space also have to be shared. U-32 has the NATO designation S-182. The steel colossus is 56 meters long, 7 meters wide, and 11.5 meters high. It generates 4,240 horsepower. U-32 can dive to at least 250 meters. Officially, in a defense scenario, it is armed with 6 torpedoes. The crew and control rooms are located in the central part of the pressurized hull. In this very limited space, the up to 30 men and women often have to live and work for several weeks. At the rear is the passage to England alone is a challenge for both vessel and crew. Eckernförde Bay. It stretches 17 kilometers inland. There are numerous marinas and jetties here, and a lot of traffic. U-32 constantly has to avoid other seagoing vessels, such as yachts and fishing boats. Using sonar, radar, and the periscopes, First Watch Officer Beck and his staff constantly observe their surroundings.
We always use the periscopes just to compare the contacts we have on the radar, because we can't say for sure whether the different blips on the radar, as we call them, are a vessel, a barrel, or just interference. A rain shower, for example, or a larger bird flying by can always show up briefly on the screen.
U-32 is about to submerge and will then be virtually invisible for other skippers. The crew now has to be especially careful to avoid collisions.
Crew, 2 diving stations.
2 diving stations.
The long drawn-out intonation of the commands ensures the crew can recognize them from the melody. That's particularly important in emergency situations. The commander is the last person on the bridge before the submarine dives. He goes up once more to check whether the vessel's upper decks really are ready for diving. He alone is responsible for the safety of his crew. Only when the commander is satisfied that the submarine can dive safely does he return to the control room to give the order.
Dive down to periscope depth.
Dive down to periscope depth.
The helmsman is responsible for course, speed, and depth. After the watch officer has given the command, the helmsman steers the submarine down to the given depth. U-32 begins to submerge. For the submarine to submerge completely and go down to periscope depth takes 60 seconds.